This is the race that nearly killed Formula One. A weekend so brutal that by Sunday evening, 2 drivers were dead, dozens were injured, and the entire sport was forced to confront a terrifying reality. They were playing Russian roulette at 200 miles per hour. What happened at Imola in 1994 wasn't just tragic, it was inevitable. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this single weekend didn't just change the rules of Formula One, it changed the very soul of motorsport forever. To understand why Imola became a killing field, you need to understand what Formula One had become by 1994. The sport was in the middle of its most dangerous transition in decades. Just months earlier, the FIA had banned all electronic driver aids. No more traction control, no more active suspension, and no more computer assistance. The cars were now 700 horsepower missiles, and the drivers were essentially test pilots figuring out how to tame machines that wanted to kill them. At the center of this chaos were 2 men. Ayrton Senna, the 3-time world champion struggling with an uncompetitive Williams, and Michael Schumacher, the young German who was rewriting the record books in his Benetton. Their rivalry was electric, but it was happening against the backdrop of cars that were becoming increasingly unpredictable. Imola's Autodromo Enzo Edino Ferrari was the perfect venue for disaster. With its high-speed corners, concrete walls inches from the racing line, and a layout that had barely changed since the 1960s, the track was a relic from an era when safety was an afterthought. Now, it was hosting the most advanced and dangerous racing cars ever built. The weekend's first warning came during Friday practice, and it should have been enough to stop everything. Rubens Barrichello, a talented Brazilian in his second F1 season, was pushing his Jordan through the high-speed Variante Bassa chicane when he hit a curb at nearly 140 miles per hour. His car launched into the air, slammed into the tyre barriers, and came to rest upside down with Barrichello unconscious inside. For agonizing minutes, nobody knew if he was alive or dead. Miraculously, Barrichello survived, but the crash was a crystal-clear warning. These cars were too fast, too light, and too dangerous for tracks designed in a different era. The smart move would have been to red flag the session, reassess safety measures, or even cancel the weekend. Instead, Formula One did what it always did. It kept racing. The show, as they say, must go on. That decision would prove fatal. Saturday qualifying brought the weekend's first death. Roland Ratzenberger was a 33-year-old Austrian rookie fighting his way up the motorsport ladder. This was supposed to be his breakthrough season, his chance to prove he belonged in Formula One. Driving for the tiny SimTech team, Ratzenberger was pushing to qualify for what would be just his 3rd Grand Prix. On his final lap, his car's front wing, damaged in an earlier incident, finally failed completely at the high-speed Villeneuve corner. When Ratzenberger's car lost its front wing, he became a passenger at 190 miles per hour. With no downforce, he couldn't steer or brake, leaving him with no choice but to watch as the concrete wall rushed toward him. The Villeneuve Curvar had no tyre barriers or other impact-absorbing installations, and the devastating impact snapped his neck instantly, killing him before the car even came to a stop. The television cameras captured everything. The sickening impact, the motionless car, the frantic medical team who already knew it was too late.
Roland Ratzenberger succumbed to injuries sustained in the accident which took place at Imola circuit during Saturday qualifying practice, April the 30th.
In the paddock, drivers and team members watched in stunned silence. Ayrton Senna, the sport's greatest champion, was seen openly weeping. Professor Sid Watkins, the head of F1's medical team, later recalled in his memoirs how he tried to convince Senna to quit the sport. He found Senna broken down and crying on my shoulder and pleaded, "What else do you need to do? You have been world champion 3 times, give it up and let's go fishing." But with a sense of tragic inevitability that would haunt the sport forever, Senna replied, "Sid, there are certain things over which we have no control. I cannot quit, I have to go on."
Just before the race, I said to him, "You're the fastest guy around. Why don't you quit?" He said, "I can't quit. I have to go on."
Despite Ratzenberger's death, the race organizers and the FIA made the controversial decision to continue the weekend as planned. Drivers, heartbroken but bound by their contracts, were expected to get back into their cars just 24 hours later. This was a reflection of an era where the show, no matter the human cost, had to go on. Race day dawned under a cloud of dread. Senna, visibly shaken by Ratzenberger's death, had spent the morning discussing safety concerns with other drivers. But when the time came, he strapped himself into his Williams and prepared to race. The chaos began on the first lap. JJ Leto's Benetton stalled on the grid, and Pedro Lamy slammed into his rear at full speed. The impact launched debris into the grandstands, injuring 8 spectators and a police officer. The race simply continued under a safety car. Here's where the story takes an even darker turn. The safety car being used was a standard Opel Vectra, completely inadequate for keeping Formula One cars at proper operating temperature. As the field circulated slowly behind it, tyre and brake temperatures plummeted, making the cars even more unpredictable. Senna, leading the field, was growing increasingly frustrated. When the safety car finally pulled in on lap 7, he knew he had to make his move. What happened next unfolded in horrifying slow motion. As Senna accelerated out of the Tamburello corner, his Williams suddenly snapped to the right. At 190 miles per hour, there was no time to react. The car hit the concrete wall with devastating force. A piece of the right front suspension, acting like a spear, penetrated Senna's helmet and killed him instantly. The 3-time world champion, the man many considered the greatest driver who ever lived, was gone. After the crash, officials searching the wreckage of Senna's car made a heartbreaking discovery: a small, furled Austrian flag. He had planned to wave it in honor of Roland Ratzenberger. While the world was still reeling from Senna's crash, the race went on. In the moments that followed, a horrifying mistake was made. The Larus team, unaware of the situation, released Eric Comas from the pit lane. Comas rejoined the track at race speed, heading directly towards the scene of the accident. He was so traumatized by the sight that he immediately withdrew from the race and wouldn't speak of what he witnessed for more than a decade. As the laps ticked by, Michael Schumacher's genius was on full display with his aggressive 3-stop strategy and a lighter car. But the rest of the grid was in a state of decay. The cars of 1994 were proving to be as fragile as they were fast, with only 10 of the 25 cars making it to the finish line. The chaos even returned to the pit lane. During a routine stop, a wheel came loose from Michele Alboreto's car, flew off and struck 4 mechanics.
Oh, what's that wheel off? It's a Minardi, and it looks to me an accident in the pit lane now. It's a Ferrari mechanic that's on the ground.
Incredibly, team bosses begged race control to stop the event, but they were rejected. The race, unbelievably, continued. When the checkered flag finally waved, Schumacher took the victory, but there was no sense of celebration. On the podium, the drivers stood in silence. Out of respect for Roland Ratzenberger, no champagne was sprayed, a final somber tribute to the drivers the weekend had claimed. Formula One found itself facing an existential crisis. 2 drivers dead in 2 days, multiple injuries. A global television audience had watched the sport's biggest star die in real time. The questions were immediate and brutal. How had this been allowed to happen? And could Formula One survive? The answer to that last question would depend entirely on what happened next. Within 48 hours of Senna's death, Formula One began the most comprehensive safety overhaul in motorsport history. The FIA, finally forced to confront the consequences of years of negligence, threw out decades of tradition and started over. The changes were immediate and sweeping. Tamburello and Villeneuve corners were neutered with chicanes. Cockpit sides were raised to better protect drivers' heads. Wheel tethers were mandated to prevent flying debris. Crash tests became exponentially more stringent. But the real revolution went deeper than just rule changes. The entire culture of Formula One shifted overnight. The old mentality, that danger was simply part of the sport, was finally, definitively dead. The casual attitude towards safety that had defined motorsport for decades was replaced by an obsessive focus on protecting drivers' lives. Every subsequent safety innovation, from the HANS device to the Halo, can trace its origins back to that terrible weekend at Imola. Here's the part that still stings. None of this had to happen. The dangers of Imola were well known. The technology to make the sport safer existed, and the knowledge was there. What was missing was the will to act until it was too late. It took the deaths of Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna to force Formula One to prioritize driver safety over tradition, spectacle, and profit. Today, Formula One is the safest it has ever been. The last driver to die in a Formula One car was Jules Bianchi in 2015, and his death led to even more safety improvements. Every safety feature in a modern Formula One car, every barrier, every medical protocol, every piece of protective equipment exists because 2 men died at Imola in 1994. Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna paid the ultimate price for Formula One's awakening, and their sacrifice transformed the sport forever. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix wasn't just a race. It was the moment Formula One grew up, faced its demons, and chose to value human life over everything else. That's a lesson worth remembering, and a legacy worth honoring. The weekend that nearly killed Formula One ultimately saved it by forcing the sport to confront its own mortality. If this deep dive into F1's darkest chapter opened your eyes to how safety innovations are written in blood, smash that like button, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more untold stories from the sport's most pivotal moments.